Hello, everyone. This isn't a full episode today, but I just wanted to talk very quickly about something that happened this weekend that pertains to some of the things I write about and offer here on my own Substack. Um, if anyone is a sports fan, the Ryder Cup was this past weekend. Even if you're not a sports fan, just keep listening for 2 minutes. There was a lot of discussion about how that event played out, especially regarding the behavior of both the fans in New York as well as some of the players. And in my course on sports and literature, as well as in one of my podcast episodes I did a couple months ago, I will include both links below. I talk about how, as an athlete, but also as a literature scholar, I teach young people how to behave in sports properly. That we have to be aiming at something beyond just winning and losing for the sport to function properly and for excellence to truly win. At the event this weekend, which is the biggest event in the golf world, and because it's international, it goes beyond just American sports fans. It got pretty ugly, and that has become the storyline that has emerged. The European team played very well for the first 2 days. The American team played very well on the last day, and that is kind of getting lost amid the story of what the environment was like. And so I talk about these things at length again in my sportsmanship episode, which is for players, but it relates to fans or anyone else participating in any and watching any sort of sporting event, but also in my sports and literature course, where I lay out methodically like all of the elements of sport that give athletes and coaches and fans and anyone participating the best opportunities to enjoy sport, but also to understand their role as a participant better so that it's more enjoyable and it lasts longer and we don't have these conflicts, because sports can be better than just constant conflict. So we see in this weekend's events where the fans themselves, as well as Bryson DeChambeau a little bit and Rory McIlroy a little bit, let the shadow side of their character overtake them in certain points. And this idea of how to live fully as a character in literature, but also to avoid the shadow qualities. That's something I talk about in my sports and literature course. In the person of Englishman Tommy Fleetwood, he won the sportsmanship award for the weekend, and the reason why is because one, he was such a good teammate to the guys on his own side, but he was also involved in a conflict, and he was the only one in the conflict to basically take the high road and not fight. And he kept his calm more than anyone else in the situation. And I think that's what got him that prestigious award that is given at every event regarding sportsmanship. That award that is given is based on an event from the late 60s where two famous competitors acted in a very gentlemanly way toward each other. And it had the highest goal for maintaining the sport, for maintaining that event going forward. It wasn't just about winning and losing. It was about preserving people's dignity, the competitors, but also making sure that it was played in the right way so that it could continue on into the future. And what's so interesting is based on how many of the fans have reacted and even some of the competitors here, some of the discussion is should we ever allow an event to go back to New York? Because the people there are so terrible at sporting events, especially something like golf, where a certain sense of decorum and just respect is sort of part of the game. They're like, well, maybe we shouldn't even do any events there anymore. Well, that's the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish with sport, is that we're trying to have this event, but we're also trying to maintain it for the future. And if you've already given it away based on your behavior, well, you're crumbling the very fabric of sport, and we don't want to do that. And so this is what I talk about in my classes and with my young people, as a athletic coach, that we have to have higher goals than just winning and losing and haha, I'm trash talking those people because I don't like them or they're being mean to me, so I'm going to be mean back. Nope, there's a higher way of participating in sport, and that was in many regards lost this past weekend. What we also saw regarding how sports are examples of the real world played out in a distilled form is, there was a rule that came up that is sort of a very strange rule, and it ended up playing a significant role this weekend. And so what sports can do is we can take rules, both in the sport as well as in the community, and go, okay, well, let's play those out. What would happen if we had to use this rule? Or if we play by the rules, does this make our game better? Well, it kind of in this case, it made the game a little bit worse. And so there's going to have to be a reevaluation of that rule regarding this specific golf event. And that's what sports can do is, okay, we play this out, we try out these rules, see how they work. And if they keep the game functioning so that everyone wants to keep playing, great, then the rules work. But we had one rule that came up where we're like, well, that rule is kind of dumb, actually. Now that we've seen it in real effect, that could be a huge problem. And so that's what sports allow you to do is revisit the things you thought were correct and shift them, adjust them a little bit so that in the future it plays out better and fairer for everyone involved. So even in the technicalities of the game, like the rules, there was an example of that I talk about in my sports class. I think it's in the very first lecture, actually, that you constantly work on adjusting the rules so that it helps benefit everyone, not just one side. You're not just, penalizing people for breaking rules. You're trying to find out the best rules so that everyone enjoys the event more. So that's something I talk about as well. And overall, the big thing that I cover in a variety of facets, because I talk about rivalries, and this American-Europe rivalry is huge. I have a whole unit on that. But really what sports have to do, and this is what each player has to do, and each team has to do, and each coach for the team, but even the fans, you have to think about the sport from a story standpoint. And you have to think, well, what kind of story do we want to play out here? And so that's what I do in my course. And it's why it's so useful for young people to start thinking about them if they're going to be an athlete or if they just are a fan. Well, how are you going to act? Because in order to act, you have to be living out a certain type of story. And if your story you're living by causes all these problems, even if you win, if it causes all these social problems, and in fact hinders your ability to keep the game even going, because after all, I said New York might even lose future events over this, well, then that's not the right story. You need to have a better story in order to, again, enjoy the game, try to win the game, but also create a game that people want to keep participating in, that people find valuable, and that uphold the values of the community. That's something else sports do is they demonstrate the values of a particular community. They say, here's what we all believe, in this case, America, or in this case, specifically New York, let's say. And we're going to do the same thing in 2 years when it goes to Europe. Here are the values of our community, okay? Let's distill those down in a hyper-focused way where there's this one competition. Sometimes it's just one game. Sometimes it's over the course of several games, like playoffs. Sometimes it's over the course of a couple weeks, like the Olympics. Like whatever the event is, we'll play this out. Here are the values we think we have in our community. And then when they get distilled to their essence and they're most competitive and they're most emotional, do those values hold up? Well, we saw several values that people say they live by, where they want to have good sportsmanship. They want to have proper competition and following of rules and respect for everyone involved. Well, those fell apart a bit. And so clearly the story that you were saying that you live by didn't match up. So you got to refocus. What's your story? What does all of this mean from a narrative standpoint for how are we going to play this out? Because everything we do is a narrative, including sports, as I describe in my course. So if you were watching sports this weekend and saw some, whether it was in the golf tournament or watching football or whatever, baseball playoffs are going on right now. There's lots of sports going on, and we're trying to track and see what values from the community are being upheld here, what are good that we want to keep doing, what are we trying but they don't really work very well, so we need to update them, what is being played out that we go, no, that is not how we should be acting. Those do not represent the values of our community. We need to get rid of those parts of that sport or the people involved in those activities. These are all things that should be talked about a lot. And when young people are watching these events and they're adopting the behaviors they see either from the athletes or from the crowd, and now they think, oh, this is what you do when you go to a golf tournament. You scream obscenities at people. Like, no, that's not a value our community wants to be living out. So we need to craft a story for anyone involved in the sports world so that, again, it remains competitive, but it's also enjoyable and it perpetuates itself, that we actually want to keep doing this because it's a great experience. It's fun. It's not insulting and demeaning and abusive like what was happening in the crowd that day. And that's the ultimate goal of sport. So I explain all of this in much greater depth. Again, I have a single episode about sportsmanship with how to teach kids. But also I have a whole course that I give you a glimpse into my college class. I've also simplified down for, high school or even middle school students can handle it. But it's great for parents to watch and participate along with their students, but it's also great for coaches or teachers, anyone who works with athletes in the actual athletic sense or in an academic sense. It's a great opportunity to help your young people learn proper behavior in that domain. It's just one domain of life. There are other ways that your kids are going to need to follow community values and learn how to behave. But a lot of kids play sports. A lot of people watch sports. It's kind of an important part of our culture. So we need to be doing it properly. And I have a lot of tools to help you do that. So if you have questions, shoot me a message. Let me know. I can explain these further. I can meet with you. I can talk you through some of this stuff. But those are a great place to start to get the basic understanding of how we can do sports better. So take a look at the links below. Thanks for watching.